monetization through autonomy. And if it happens to be that, all the different parts of it are suitable to a book, well, it'll be great.
Hi, Mr. Guy.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very, very well. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining. This is Mr. Kai. He's amazing. I mean, I was following your channel so much. If you don't mind, introduce yourself.
Well, no, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and I love to share some of my stories with people like yourself. Myself, I think you would say it's not quite a conventional journey. And that's interesting because I was really brought up in a very conventional way. Parents, they were affected by the Second World War, so there wasn't much education, and they grew through the ranks and worked hard and, clearly conveyed those values to myself as well. And for some reason, I think I can say I probably did that traditional path quite well because I rose through the ranks and went into finance, ended up to be chief operating officer of in one of the major financial institutions. But there was one particular event that made me stop and pause a little bit. And I still remember I was sent to a different country. A company paid for the apartment. It was beautiful, like penthouse flat. You got the whole skyline underneath you. And I had a few friends over, a few work colleagues of mine. And one of them came over, tapped me on the shoulder and said, Kai, you've done really well for yourself. And at that moment, I should have been really ecstatic and happy and all of this, but I wasn't. I was happy about the things that I did, but I still realized I didn't have autonomy over my time, over my decisions, or over my income. That was somebody else's. And at that point, I knew, yes, I'm perfectly happy with where we are, but there must be more to life. And that's kind of what inspired the whole journey and my journey on YouTube as well, and the high performance freedom system that I developed. And that's kind of where my journey started.
This is amazing because I almost wanted to ask you the other questions, but you already hit the nail on its head because there was the inspiration behind the change. So thank you so much.
But if you become aware, the next step to get to your personal autonomy is building leverage. And for me, it was quite interesting. I've done it before, but you can only do that if you are really good at what you do already. So I was chief operating officer in this organization, and I sat down with my CEO one day, and I said, what do you think of me not being in the office on Fridays? And he said, why? And I was completely almost honest with him. I said, well, I actually think of getting a private pilot's license. I really want to do it. The business is quite slow at the moment. I'll still be working on Friday, but I really want to get to the airfields, et cetera, et cetera. He goes like, oh, that's really cool. I've got a nephew who's becoming a pilot and all of that. But I could only do that because I've already built the relationship. I've already demonstrated that the work that I do would go swimmingly no matter what. If I was like a marginal performer at that point, I probably have heard, no, you've got to be in the office. There's no way I would allow you to do that. And that's what I mean by building leverage. So you become aware that you're not autonomous, but you have to build leverage. And it's not a, one day task. It's something that you build over time. And it's also a reason why I'm not a proponent of, oh, leave your 9 to 5, that's a bad thing. I don't think that at all. You can build perfect personal autonomy, even in a 9 to 5 job. You just have to be aware what's important to you, what do you try to achieve, and what does that autonomy actually mean to you?
I remember you talk about taking full control. There are basically four things. Correct me if I'm wrong: awareness, leverage, monetization, and full autonomy. So I read somewhere that you, especially leverage, that you said now, the second one, and then we will come to the second and the third and the fourth. But you just mentioned about airplanes. So I mean, being a pilot, because let me jump into that, and then we can take it
Mhm.
from there. You're originally from Frankfurt, from Germany, right?
I was born in Germany, yes,
Oh,
even
okay.
though
Cool.
I haven't spent time there for the last 30 years. So if you ask me something in German, I can respond, but I wouldn't respond well in German. Becoming a pilot, well, at the point I decided I wanted to do this commercially. I've already done my private pilot license and I had some experience, but of course, doing it commercially is a complete different kettle of fish. So, um, but at the time, I thought to myself, well, it's something I enjoy. I might as well get paid for it. I never intended this to be like my full-time future career, but it's something where I said, this is something to add to my portfolio. And there are a lot of transferable skills that I already have that are part of an airline pilot. So, for example, you have to be really good at, well, the airlines call it crew resource management, but we call it leadership and we call it uh, building a work culture, right? Just that your work culture is just two people in the cockpit, but it's still a transferable skill. And that's what I really encourage people to do, not to think just about their immediate job. Okay, I'm a builder, I know about brakes, but you know about concepts, you know about how to put things together that can be applied to so many different industries, right? Aviation is a very interesting industry for me because I talked about the cadets and it is very rewarding to see them. But for most of the cadets, becoming an airline pilot is like the first thing they do in their life. For me, it was like the 15th thing I was doing. But for most of them, it's the first thing. They are like 18, 20, 21 years old. And they do it out of pure passion. And that's really rewarding. But I also fly a lot with pilots who are now 30 or 40 years old. And no matter how big your passion is, at some stage you think like, well, okay, what do I do now? Right? I've mastered all the steps. Uh, Frankly, there isn't that much new in an airplane over time. It's very safe, it's very regulated, so you have very few changes. And so as people grow older, it's not the passion that drives you. It's what can I do with my time? And a lot of them are very happy because as an airline pilot, you have a lot of free downtime. They spend lots of time with their families, etc. So for many, that works very well. And it's one of the other things. Yes, you don't own your time or income or your decisions. A roster is given to you. But if that is exactly what you wish, if that's how you feel free, I'm happy for you.
You're you're spot on because one of the video that you have your own YouTube channel. So guys who's listening, please go to his YouTube channel. I'll put it in the link in the description. It's called kaidleifert. If I'm not misspell, I'll put it on the link because one of the video that you says is I worked 30 years for this, the brutal truth about success. And that is wow. I think tens of thousands of views already. And there was three simple but very powerful message. And one of the messages you just mentioned was the title. Don't fixate on the title of your job, because you elaborate so beautifully that those skills that you have learned that you can apply. That is something that is very unconventional, Mr. Kai. The second question I have to you is everyone follow the default definition of success. And if
Hmm.
you don't mind, elaborate your definition of success, because you mentioned about autonomy and also the internal search of success. Yeah.
Yes. I think for me, it starts all with, do I own my decisions? Because again, I'm not against a 9 to 5 job or having employment. Uh, Fun fact, I still fly when I can. Last year I was flying somewhere in Germany, ironically, so very close to the Netherlands. Well, clearly I built some leverage over the years I've spent there, where they go like, okay, you can't do it this time. We'll see you next year, hopefully. And this is what I mean by what's my definition of success. I own my decisions. I can decide, okay, I do this now, I do that. I have downsides to that, right? They're not paying me when I'm not flying for them. I have to do something else. But as long as I own those decisions, then I own my time. Then I can also own the income that I have. And that for me is the ultimate autonomy, the ultimate freedom. And that's why I think success is a trap. They all think, okay, well, you've now made it. You're a CEO, on paper, you're done. But that's not necessarily how you feel. But if you feel free to do whatever you like within reason, then you truly own your time, decisions, your money. And that's what success looks like to me.
Would you mind elaborate a little bit on how you overcome that fear, please?
Fear is a good one. I actually read a really good book on this. I'll have to look up the title because I don't remember it right now. But I buy into the notion of that book. Excuse the pun, but we are all afraid to talk about fear. We think, okay, we are taught to be fearless, be fearless, do your own thing, be confident. And that kind of creates a wall between you and what's lying ahead of you in the future. I think we can accept our fears. It's okay to be anxious sometimes. It's okay to fear certain things. Like, yeah, as an airline pilot, do I fear that I've got an engine failure? Yes. Not every day, not when I get into that's not the case. But what it does is I'm aware this can happen. So as a pilot, you train for the case where that is actually the case. And then you notice that actually it's not a big deal. For all those anxious flyers out there, uh, don't take that too hard too much. But but it's true. I was once uh, a part of a crew where an engine stopped working mid-flight. To be honest, we didn't even notice for 3, 4 minutes. Nothing happens, right? And then you go through your procedures and you know make everything secure. So it's not one mistake that is problematic as an airline pilot. And if you study all the airline disasters, it's never one mistake. It's a combination of many mistakes that compound over time. You don't recognize it, then you do something else, then you make another mistake, then there is a adverse circumstance like an external effect, whatever it is. And that leads to disasters. And that's quite comforting because we can take that into our own lives. It's very rarely that you make one mistake and your life is done. That's not how it works, right? What you need to be aware of is, okay, what are the things that I am afraid of? Admit it to yourself and say, how do I now train for them so that they become not a big deal? And it's part of that whole framework of let me become aware, let me build the leverage. And now we get to how do we become more independent from like the income that somebody else decides, what do I do myself to get to a stage where, if I lose my job, God forbid, it's not such a big deal because I've got options.
You gave a great example about doing the training first, awareness, and so. The follow-up question that I have, I was curious about how that transition became amazing. That you have written, if I'm not mistaken, the report or publish it about the derivatives, if not the first one in Europe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow.
It's another interesting experience,
Wow.
um, another learning point, if you like, because I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of studies around derivatives. I've explored some models myself, and risk management at the time was prevalent in some banks, but it wasn't the industry I wanted to get into. I wanted to be in investment management, and at that point, risk management wasn't a thing. Nobody was talking about it, right? Um, and I got a contact of somebody who later on turned out to be the best boss you can ever think about. Um, and I made contact and I said, look, I've done this in my studies. I think this is something that really applies to your industry. There are great things I can do for you. And he said, like, well, no, we don't need that. We're not interested. You know, go away, basically. Um, I didn't go away. I went back and young as I was, I banged my head against the wall saying, well, look, but this is really great. I can do this. I can build a risk management department. I'm like, go away. We don't need this, right? And I had a third contact with him, right? And he didn't even let me get to the part where I was telling him all the great things I could do. He goes like, look, we have this one department. Everybody left. It's a mess. It's performance measurement. It needs fixing. Do you want to fix it? I said, well, can I build a risk management department around it? He goes like, no, you just fixed this, right? And I said, yes. And that was the best yes of my life, I would say, because I went there and it was hard work and he wasn't exaggerating that it was a mess because it was. But I realized something that follows me up to today, to this very day, with every decision I make. We all have plans in our heads. We have goals and aspirations. Nobody cares, right? They want to know, okay, I've got a problem. Can you help me solve this? So I went in there, I solved the problem for him, but that wasn't the only thing I was doing. I was taking away some time, put it to a side, a couple of hours a day, and I started to build this risk management department. I didn't tell anybody about it. And when I was ready, I was like, oh, by the way, once I finished with the problem that was to solve, I've also done this. I was like, oh, that's really great. Let's talk about this. And it was so interesting because you wouldn't believe this, but between this conversation of go away and can you fix this problem? And the time when this very same person named me the first and the youngest head of risk management for this bank, it was 3 months. That was all, right? And it
Awesome.
shows stop thinking so much about all the things that you want to do. Think about what's needed for the other person. And then rather than talk about it, do the things you wanted to do. And when you're done, show them. And that'll be your success.
I cannot believe it that you have done it so well in 3 months' time. Really, that struck me. And I read somewhere that you enjoy sharing your knowledge and inviting other views as well. So and also the best of the best is you don't see yourself as a guru or a teacher, but someone who is wanted to share your true wisdom. That's so honestly that I was thinking, are you writing a book or planning to publish one? Because I want to search on Amazon, and if I'm not mistaken, do you have a book or anything, or planning to
I
write
don't
one?
have a book yet.
Oh, cool.
Um,
Okay.
the, what I started to do, and this is where like this high performance freedom system comes in.
Yeah.
I've started to really document, mainly for myself as well, what are the things that really help me? What are, how do you get to a blueprint? And I'm not a teacher because I'm not good at teaching. I like showing people what's possible. And I also think that the main thing to do it is sharing your experiences, but then also helping people to come together in a community, right? Like the reason this is all interesting is because you and I have a conversation with each other, and you have knowledge and you think about things completely different. If I only think about how I see the world, it becomes pretty boring. And then I speak to other people. You mentioned the video about I've worked 30 years for that. I was blown away by the amount of comments I received, the amounts of affirmation that people feel the same. But it also showed a lot of things where I go like, actually, I haven't thought about that. And that's what makes this, that's why I don't like the notion of a teacher, but rather a guide, if you like. Let's talk about this. Let's have a conversation. And that's what I'm also building in my system. At the moment, it's closed, but I hope to reopen it in July of this year, where I help people see how do you get through those four stages that we talked about, the autonomy, leverage, monetization, and then true autonomy. And if it happens to be that, all the different parts of it are suitable to a book, well, it'll be great.
I will be the first buyer if you don't mind. I can talk to you whole day, but in the interest of time, where can people find you and contact you?
I think the best way to find me is start on YouTube because you need to connect with somebody first. Yes, you can connect, you can write an email, but there's only so many people where the message really resonates. And I think YouTube is great for that because it helps people get to know you before you build an even deeper connection, right? And YouTube is a great way to learn about some of the basics. Yes, I'm on LinkedIn. I have a newsletter there where I talk about some of the concepts as well. But that's a good starting point. And after that, as I said, I'm reopening my freedom system again in July. So there's a opportunity to sign up just to get information about that. And you can do that as well.
And also, if you can tell us basically your last remark.
I think the most important message I I want to get to is question the definitions of success, question what society tells you. It doesn't mean everything's wrong. It also doesn't mean everything is right. And as soon as you question it, you become aware of what does success truly mean to you. And that's what's important to me. Not that you follow everything I say, follow everything that society has, but what does it truly mean to you? And if you can do that in your life, I think we all together make the world a better place.
Oh, pleasure talking to you,
No,
Mr. Kai.
that
Yeah.
absolutely a pleasure to talk to you as well.